team. I am also a longtime member of 350 Massachusetts as well.
Great. Karina.
Hi, I'm Karina Campobasso. I am a member of Mothers Out Front Winthrop. And I thank all of the representatives for being here today. Thank you.
Sue.
I'm Sue Swanson from Mothers Out Front Bedford, and I also thank you all for your presence and your time.
Corinne.
Corinne Dowd from Bedford Mothers Out Front. Also glad to be here with everyone.
And Neil.
Neil Rasmussen from Concord, from Save Our Heritage.
Katie.
I'm with Save Our Heritage Projects Director. I also have another hat, and that is Coordinator of the Coalition to Stop Private Jet Expansion at Hanscom or Anywhere.
Anna.
Hi, Anna Winter. I'm the Executive Director of Save Our Heritage at Concord.
Carol.
I'm Carol Kelly. I'm from Mothers Out Front Bedford also, and I'm happy to be here. It should be an interesting meeting.
And finally, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessie Foley. I'm Rep Gordon Staff Director. It's nice to see you all.
Nice to see you too. So I think we'll turn it over to Neil now, who's going to give us the information background we all need for a good discussion afterwards.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Is that working for you?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so my name's Neil Rasmussen. I'm a retired high-tech exec with a background in energy and energy efficiency, including areas like solar, fuel cells, and batteries. Today, I serve on various boards, including the board of MIT, where I serve on special committees related to climate science, environmental engineering, and nuclear engineering. I'm also the president of Save Our Heritage and speaking on their behalf today. So the 1%, the 0.1% have a problem. They have a homelessness problem. They can't find housing for all the luxury private jets they're buying and flying. But our government has an answer to that. This project, they plan to provide hangars for these luxury jets. So what? Why should we care? There's three major reasons. One is, first, the use of these jets generates obscene amounts of greenhouse gases, contrary to local, state, and federal plans. Second, these jets and their facilities are highly subsidized by the taxpayer, through both the state and federal governments. And third, these jets represent indefensible social and climate injustice. Let me explain. So you can see on this picture the project footprint as proposed by the proponent. And we don't need to get into the details of this, but you can see a lot of little boxes there that represent hangars. And this project, what's interesting about it, it's located on the edge of Hanscom Field, which is located between the towns of Lexington, Concord, Bedford, and Lincoln. And what's interesting about this picture here is it's 2/3 of a mile in length. And all these buildings, each one of these buildings can house a number of jets. And it's actually the largest jet infrastructure project in America. So the proposed project that we're talking about expands hangar count by 4 times, extends hangar square feet capacity by 2.3 times, 37 acres of pavement. And it's the largest development in the history of Hanscom Field for sure. And the purpose of it, of course, is to relieve luxury jet capacity constraints at the airport. And Massport has openly said a number of times, we're responding to the planned growth of private luxury jets. And as I said before, it's the largest such project known in America, maybe in the world. Now, what do we have to think? What do we have to say about this? Well, the legislature has passed this act, Chapter 8 of 2021, that has a net zero requirement by 2050 and requires every sector to have declining emissions during that period. Out here in the suburbs, the various towns have plans to meet this, and they're trying to execute against them, and it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. And here's the 4 towns around. You can see they're all like 250,000, range of 250,000 tons of CO2e and declining toward 2050. And a lot of the towns around the Commonwealth have such plans. But Hanscom has different plans. Just the jets at Hanscom have a growth rate that exceeds all of those town plans considerably. So if you look at this graph, it's a little confusing, but the 4 town plans, I changed the vertical axis. The 4 town plans to reduce greenhouse gases are at the bottom, and they're going down in time, as you can see. But the Hanscom plan just for jets already is much higher than any of those emits much more greenhouse gases than any of those towns, and has a plan not to go down, but to go up. And how fast it goes up depends on the growth rate of private jets. The industry is on a tear. They've been growing at 10% a year. Hanscom's own plans are thinking more like 5%. And even if it was only 2%, which is, it's not been that low for a long time over any period of time, you can see that would go up as well. And by the time we're done in 2050, all of us have done all these work in all these towns to cut to 2050 to 0 if we make it. But the Hanscom plans have gone up during all this time. And there's a chart. The green line is the Boston plan, which started out much higher, but is planning to come down by 2050. And as you can see, the entire city of Boston will be exceeded in greenhouse gases by like 2040 if everybody meets their plan, which is just crazy. I mean, it's hard to explain to all the people in these towns that they will have to make certain kinds of sacrifices to meet this plan, where at the same time, this airport and these jets feel no constraint at all or no requirement to meet any reduction in greenhouse gases. The project, just as a reference, here's what hangars look like over time. The capacity of them since 1990, it slowly increased, but now you can see it's really on an explosive growth curve. And this is this is including the projected plan after it's built. So what are these things for? They have a high environmental cost and a low societal benefit. Incredibly, just to put it in reference, we're proud to say in Massachusetts, we've done a lot with solar energy, and a lot more than a lot of our neighboring states. And we've installed 4 gigawatts of solar, and that offsets a certain amount of greenhouse gases. And so it's a benefit to our society, and as part of our plan to reduce greenhouse gases. But the emissions of just the jets at Hanscom today cancel out 50% of all of the greenhouse gas gains we've gotten through all of the cumulative solar ever installed in Massachusetts. And obviously it cancels out any of the progress even a combination of towns will make. And what does it service? It's supposedly a public airport owned by the state. It services only a few people. You can't even get in there if you're a normal person. And it services primarily resort destinations. There's articles, including from the Wall Street Journal, explaining this. And we are doing a detailed study of all of the flight operations out of Hanscom Field and have already determined from that, and will issue a report showing that almost all of these flights go to resort destinations. Or not all of them, but over 50% of them are going to resort destinations. And just to put this in reference, if we go out there and try and explain to the rest of the world how we're supposed to reduce greenhouse gases, but the emissions from one private luxury jet trip to Asia exceed the emissions of an entire rural family in India for the period of an entire lifetime. That just puts this in perspective. It's going to be really hard for us to explain. They need to reduce the use of fertilizer or cement, for example, which are big greenhouse gas contributors, and to allow us to continue to fly these luxury private jets. But here's the kicker. We subsidize all this extensively. besides the fact that they don't pay the true cost of greenhouse gas emissions, the social cost of carbon, which they totally avoid paying for, there's no sales tax on private jets in Massachusetts. It's specifically excluded in the code. And not only are you excluded, like if you buy a car, even if you try and escape to New Hampshire and buy it and bring it back, they'll find you and make you pay tax on it. But no matter where you buy it, you're exempted in Massachusetts. And not only that, those planes, when you buy them, are not outfitted completely. Typically, one of those planes has if you buy it for $25 million, it has a $5 million zebra wood and leather interior that you're going to add. All of those activities are exempt from tax as well. There's no property tax on private jet facilities on Massport land. They're not assessed any taxes locally, no matter what town they're in. And the tax laws at the federal level provide incredible write-offs and tax breaks to incent jet ownership. And I could go on and on. You take these things, put them in these, you don't own them personally, you put them in LLCs, you declare all their expenses to be a unfortunate loss, write them all off. This is why people like Donald Trump can fly around in all these jets for basically nothing. And we can't go fix this by, like we could say, wow, let's just tax these guys with fuel tax or something. It's prohibited by federal law. We're not allowed to apply any such tax. And they fly in these airports with all these runways and towers and operations and everything else. Who pays for that? Not those jets. They're paid primarily by commercial passengers and the taxes and so on associated with commercial flights. And to add insult to injury, the FAA reauthorization bill, which probably won't pass, proposes to provide more federal dollars just to build private luxury jet hangars. And we'll see whether that gets through. But so it's easy to calculate these emissions. It's pretty simple math. There's 38,000 operations, 2 hours, approximate flight times on average, 330 gallons per hour for an average private jet, 11.9 kilograms of CO2. And then there's a radiative forcing factor of 2 applied to convert CO2 to a greenhouse gas equivalent, which is called CO2e. And that's where we get this number. Just multiply all those numbers together and you get this kind of number, 600,000 tons of CO2e. So are these things necessary for the economy, or what benefit are we getting? You can see, here's the companies offering these things. They're not offering them for business purposes. These are the kind of ads you see in the locally of what they're for. They're flying to Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, places that are, they want to bypass all the riffraff and everything else to get there. And this is what they're used for. So this is our societal benefit, is to fly people to resort destinations. Even worse, the newest operation project we saw was luxury jets for dogs. There's a whole new canine jet's just been offered. So you can have your dog flown somewhere on a private jet. So this is the kind of activity that's going on that it's hard to explain to the people of the communities in the city of Boston, that they're going to make all these sacrifices while these things are just going to crank out greenhouse gases without even a requirement to go down over time. So people have asked, is low carbon aviation coming? What if we could make these planes fly with no carbon emissions? Boy, that would be great, right? And people have spoken of electric aircraft, but this has nothing to do with private jets, because even the U.S. Aviation Climate Plan, which studied this issue, says there's no chance for any electric airplanes to replace such jets by 2050. They will only displace, if they're successful, the small propeller aircraft like Cape Air. And Cape Air is a great company that's made a commitment to try and switch over to that, but that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here, because this project's not for them. It's for private jets. Then we've got sustainable aviation fuels that you may have heard of. The thing people don't realize, when you burn them, they emit the same or more CO2e than jet fuel does. The only benefit of such fuels is in their production, they can absorb some CO2 from the atmosphere depending on the process. But this is all hypothetical. And there's almost no practical source. Some things like some certain kind of cooking oil being converted to jet fuel, used cooking oil, that's very nice. But how much, used cooking oil do we have available? And the only option is, and people have said this, even airline executives have said the only chance is synthetic fuels generated from like nuclear power or wind power. And those fuels are incredibly inefficient to generate and are basically technology that hasn't been invented yet. So we shouldn't be planning. We can't plan based on the existence of some future low carbon fuel because it doesn't exist. What we should do, if we really thought it might exist, we should wait until it does exist before we plan growth in jet travel. So why would we want to stop this project, and how does it affect the system? It's the largest jet port in New England. And constraining the jet capacity or reducing financial incentives will reduce the convenience of these flights. And this is an entire industry driven by one thing, convenience. And if we control the convenience, we control the business totally. And we'll have, what we do at Hanscom has an effect on the entire system because we're a major part of the system. And we will, by constraining this, we would put a constraint on that will reduce flights, reduce jet purchases, and even ultimately reduce private jet production. And so we'll have a ripple effect on the system. And by the way, you can bet in other places around the world where such projects are being proposed, there's similar political local activity against those projects going up. In some places like Europe, this is a lot more radical, with the Extinction Rebellion and so on, people painting these jets and gluing themselves to the runway. We're not at that level, but this is possibly where all this is heading. Now, how does this affect Logan Airport? A lot of these luxury jet owners, they want to use Logan, but it's at the limit of capacity. This project doesn't move any flights from Logan. Logan's at capacity. It'll continue to be at capacity. And anybody who can get in there is going to continue to try and get in there. And putting this out here doesn't help with that. And Logan, you could just say, well, maybe if they don't build it at Hanscom, they'll build it at Logan. But here's the deal. This project, as I showed you earlier, is 2/3 of a mile long. This cannot be built at Logan Airport. Not even a remotely small part of it can be built there because it won't fit anywhere. But here's the kicker. What we are learning, we've hired a consultant, an aviation consultant, to look at the flight data associated with operations in the metro region area. And what we found is there's a lot of activity where people can't keep their jet at Logan, so they try and keep it at Hanscom. And so you can imagine Hanscom behaves like a satellite lot to Logan. People fly into Logan, but they can't keep their plane there, so they fly it out to Hanscom empty, keep it there for a little while. Then when they want to go back somewhere, they call the plane in from Hanscom. So the fact that Logan has incapacity is solved by adding Hanscom capacity. But the result is you get a lot more flights through Logan from private jets. And this is an interesting fact, and we'll publish a report showing this, that this is an already significant amount of these kind of flights exist today. And if we build more capacity at Hanscom, it's like adding a huge satellite lot for Logan. And all these planes will park out there, just like, the Ubers wait in the satellite lot and then come in and pick you up. So this is, if there was capacity at Logan for these jets, it would decrease those kind of flights. But in reality, it's going to increase these kind of flights. So all this project, the whole idea of trying to control this project is just control the growth of private jets overall in the local metro airspace. And certainly we should not be subsidizing it. So who can control this thing? The towns have no regulatory authority at all. Legislature has no regulatory authority. The Massport has an enabling act, but nobody's ever talking about opening up that enabling act to look at it and decide what they should be worried about. But certainly the enabling act has no requirement that they concern themselves at all with any issues revolving the climate or pollution. And Massport itself has no power over these flights once the facilities are built. If they build facilities and then something happens, like a lot more flights ferry into Logan, they'll just say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it, because they cannot control flights. They are preempted by federal law from controlling any flights. So the only handle we have on trying to limit these is limiting infrastructure. It's the only control our state has, because we have no regulatory authority over aircraft and their operations at all. Once they want to be in any airport, we can't say no. And the problem is Massport really reports only to the governor, and in some senses indirectly, but she has a considerable sway over Massport, and she's the only path we have to controlling this runaway train. And you know, and the past data, we've seen it before. When they add hangars, flights go up. This is pretty simple, and it's common sense. And the people who build these things obviously believe that's going to happen. That's why they invest in building them. The governor is the only option to stop this project. And our belief is that no private luxury jet infrastructure should be built anywhere, because it's antithetical to Massachusetts and federal emissions plans. And I'd like to thank you and entertain any questions.
Shall we turn off the recording?